Holly-Ann from Patrick and Poodles, and today we are going to do free motion spider webs on our domestic machine. I came up with this free motion design a couple of years ago when I wanted to quilt spider webs on the Halloween quilt that's behind me, and I couldn't find anything on the internet telling me how I could do that at home on my domestic machine. Everything I was finding was pantographs for longer machines, and they didn't translate well. So I came up with this design, and I'm really excited that we're going to stitch it together today. I am using my Janome Memory Craft 6700P today for our demo. I really love this machine for free motion quilting. It's a really fabulous machine. Whatever machine you have at home, make sure you can drop the feed dogs. If you can drop the feed dogs, you can free motion quilt on it. The thread I'm using today is Orfil 50 weight cotton quilting thread. Make sure that whatever thread you're using is either 40 weight or 50 weight cotton quilting thread. This will make sure that the thread glides smoothly as we're free motion quilting. You're not going to get any thread breakage or any sort of tension issues. So make sure you have 50 weight thread or 40 weight thread, 100% cotton in both your bobbin and on the top. First, let's make sure that our machine is ready for free motion quilting. Make sure you have a free motion quilting foot on your machine. Drop your feed dogs, set your presser foot pressure to 0, and set your stitch length to 0. Once you've done all 4 of these things, then you're ready to go. Whenever I'm starting out with a new free motion quilting design, I always like to draw it out on paper first. This allows me to really get the fluidity of the motion down, and it really helps with your brain and muscle memory to really remember what you're doing when you get to the machine. So let's start by drawing out our spider webs on this paper. It's going to start with one big sweeping motion. This is the first point of our spider web. We're going to have 6 points on our spider web. So we're going to go ahead and make smaller arcs all the way around to make 6 points, landing right about here when we come back. So we're going in a circular motion, thinking of a spider web almost as a circle. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You'll notice that my 6th one doesn't touch the first line I made. This is because at this point we're going to start going back inside to fill in those other lines to really make that spider web shape. I'm going to continue the same arc motion, and I'm going to follow the points that I've previously made. So making an arc, stopping, again, not right at that line, a little bit below, and we're going to do that the same thing all the way around. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to continue the same motion. Again, you get smaller as you go in. Alright, so right about here I'm getting close to the center. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to keep with the same motion. They might not follow exactly my points, but what I'm trying to do is bring my thread in towards the center. Once I'm at the center, I'm going to do the same sweeping motion that we did when we started, but now it's going to be to start my next spider web. So when I'm here, I like to think about where I want that next one to be. I want it to be right about here. So I'm going to take my thread and do a big sweeping motion to start my next spider web. That's the first point of 6. So we're going to go ahead and make the other ones. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, stopping before that line and then bringing it in. It's okay if your spider webs aren't perfectly circular. In nature, they're all sorts of different shapes and sizes. Now that I'm here, again, I'm going to plan my next point. Maybe I want to take my spider web up and fill in this area. Maybe I want to take it down and fill in right around here. Or I want to continue across in a horizontal motion. I've decided I'm going to fill it in right here. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to sweep it in. You'll notice I went the opposite direction this time, and that's okay. You can go in all different ways. What you're trying to do is really just get that same sweeping motion to get that spider web. There. So now let's take what we've learned here and apply it at our machine. I have my quilting gloves on and I am ready to free motion quilt. If you don't have any quilting gloves, you can find these at big box stores, or you can also use a pair of clean gardening gloves. Same thing that we did on paper. We're going to start with one big swoop. Normally, I would have a quilt top with the batting and the backing larger than my quilt top. So I would be starting off of my quilt top in the batting and coming onto my quilt top. Because this is a practice piece, I'm just going to start near the edge. In free motion quilting, you can feel free to rotate your quilt top any way you need to really get the right angle for the piece that you're working on and the type of sewing that you're doing. Alright, so we're going to start with one big swoop. That's the first point of our 6 points of our spider web. We're going to continue, like we did on paper, to make a circle-ish shape with 6 points. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are 6 points. You'll notice that my thread does not connect to the first thread that I did. I'm stopping a little bit before so that I can start bringing that in for that next set of spider web swoops. So much like we did on paper, we are following the points of the original 6, just bringing it in, and every time I am swooping up towards the point and then in a low arc and then up towards that next point to give that spider web effect. My arcs are getting progressively smaller. I'm right near that center point, so it's time to do another big swoop to the next spider web that I want to make. You'll notice that your spider webs can be different sizes. That way they fill in the space really nicely and you're able to kind of put them where you need them to go. So I think for me, I'm going to try to come right over here and do another one right here. It looks like a space that really can use some filling up. So I'm right near the center. I'm going to do one big swoop. I'm going to aim for my point to be right about here. Okay, so that's the first point of my 6 points of the spider web. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing that I did with the first one and make 6 points and then start bringing that into the center. Okay, and then bringing it in. And again, they don't have to be perfect circles. You can feel free to pause and reposition yourself at any point. It doesn't have to be all done in one fluid motion. You'll notice that I'm taking lots of breaks to just make sure that my points are ending up where I want them to go. Okay, so that's spider web number 2. It's okay if your spider webs don't look the best. When you have them all filled into your quilt, it's going to look fabulous. So don't worry about that. We're just looking to fill in that space. So I think right here is another one that could use some filling in. So we're going to aim to make another spider web right around here. So again, from the center, I'm going to take a swoop, and I like to point out where I want to go. So you'll notice that I've been talking about when I'm done with one, where my next one is going to go. I always take a moment to pause, and then I take my finger and I do a little swoop. So I want my swoop to end up here. This is going to be the point that I'm going to start that next spider web. That helps me to visually have a track where I want to go. It helps my hands and my brain to know this is where we're aiming for. If you feel comfortable, you can free motion, and eyeball it like I do. If you don't feel super comfortable, feel free to take a chalk pencil or a water-soluble marker and actually draw that line. Help yourself with a visual guide. Now I'm going to start the 6 points again. Okay, so I feel a little smushed. My quilt, I have a lot of it over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pivot my quilt around. It's going to give me a little bit better surface area to make my spider web. Okay, I've brought it towards the center, and now we're starting to really fill in that space. It's really starting to look awesome. I think I'm going to do one last one here, and then I'm going to swoop my thread off of my quilt top. So at any point when you're making these, you can always aim yourself towards the edge of a quilt top, get yourself off that quilt top, cut your thread, and then reassess where you're at. What I did for my quilts is I wanted them to look more random. I didn't want to go in a horizontal fashion all the way across the quilt, so I aimed them sporadically in a random fashion, going up, going down, going around, and making sure that I was coming off that quilt top so I could cut my thread and reassess how they were shaping up, which really helped to figure out if they were looking random for me, if I felt like I had too many big ones in one spot, or I had a big gaping hole that I had to fill. So definitely feel free to, anytime you're close to an edge, to position yourself to come off that quilt top onto your batting and backing, cut your thread, and then look at where you're at. Which actually, I could put another one right next to it, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take one big swoop and actually swoop myself just off my quilt top so we can cut our thread and look at what we've done. Alright, I cut my thread. I'm going to take my quilting gloves off and look at my spider webs.